He offered $200,000, then 300, then $500,000. The number kept climbing, but the answer stayed the same. No. David Hasselhoff wanted to buy KITT back. The actual car. The Trans Am he'd sat in for 5 years. The car that made him famous. But the owner wouldn't sell. And when David asked why, the answer he got made him break down crying in a parking lot. What did the owner tell him? Why wouldn't he sell? And what did David Hasselhoff finally understand about himself that night? This is the story of the car he couldn't buy back. And the past he couldn't escape. It started with a phone call in 2015. David was scrolling through his phone when he saw it. An article. Original KITT car sold to private collector for $150,000. He read it twice. Then 3 times. Someone owned KITT. Not a replica. Not a tribute car. The actual hero car from Knight Rider. Car number 1. The one David had driven. The one he'd spent 5 years sitting in. The one that represented the best time of his career. And someone else owned it. David didn't know why it bothered him so much. He'd left Knight Rider 30 years ago. He'd moved on. Baywatch. Berlin. Germany. He'd done other things. Bigger things. But seeing that headline, knowing that someone owned that car, owned that piece of his history, it bothered him. He called his assistant. Find out who bought KITT. The original. I want to know who owns it. Why? His assistant asked. Just find out. 3 days later his assistant called back. His name is Marcus Welby. He's a car collector in Arizona. Owns about 40 classic TV and movie cars. KITT is part of his private collection. Is he willing to sell? I don't know. You want me to reach out? David thought about it. Did he want to reach out? Did he want to buy a car he hadn't thought about in decades? What would he even do with it? Put it in his garage, stare at it, drive it around Beverly Hills like some pathetic middle-aged man clinging to past glory? Yeah, David said. Reach out. The assistant reached out. Marcus Welby responded quickly. Polite, professional. Yes, he owned KITT. Yes, he was aware of who David Hasselhoff was. No, the car wasn't for sale. But he'd be happy to let David visit and see it if he wanted. David didn't want to visit. He wanted to own it. But visiting was a start. 2 weeks later David drove to Scottsdale, Arizona. Marcus Welby's collection was housed in a massive warehouse on the outskirts of town. When David arrived, Marcus was waiting outside. 50s fit, friendly smile. Rich guy who collected toys. Mr. Hasselhoff, this is an honor. Come in. The warehouse was enormous. Rows and rows of cars. The DeLorean from Back to the Future. The General Lee from Dukes of Hazzard. Herbie. The Batmobile. Every iconic car from TV and film history. All perfectly preserved. All gleaming under fluorescent lights. And in the center on a raised platform. KITT. David stopped walking. He hadn't expected the feeling that hit him. Seeing that black Trans Am under the lights. The red scanner on the front. The license plate that said K-Knight. It wasn't just a car. It was a time machine. It was 1982. It was being young and successful and on top of the world. It was before the drinking got bad. Before the divorces. Before everything fell apart. Beautiful, isn't she? Marcus said, walking up beside him. Yeah, David said quietly. She is. Want to sit in her? David did. He climbed into the driver's seat. The interior was exactly as he remembered. The steering wheel, the dashboard, the seat that had molded to his body over 5 years of filming. He put his hands on the wheel and closed his eyes. You okay? Marcus asked. Yeah, just memories. They talked for an hour. Marcus showed him the other cars, told stories about how he'd acquired each one. He was passionate, knowledgeable. This wasn't just a rich guy's hobby. This was his life's work. Finally, David asked the question. Marcus, I want to buy KITT. Name your price. Marcus smiled sadly. Mr. Hasselhoff, I appreciate the offer, but KITT's not for sale. I'll pay double what you paid. It's not about money. Then what is it about? Marcus walked over to KITT, ran his hand along the hood. This car means something, not just to me, to millions of people. Knight Rider was my favorite show growing up. You were my hero. Michael Knight was the guy I wanted to be. And this car, this actual car, it's a piece of history. It belongs in a collection, protected, preserved, not sitting in someone's garage gathering dust. It wouldn't gather dust, David said. I'd take care of it. I believe you would. But Mr. Hasselhoff, can I be honest with you? Sure, you don't want this car. Not really. You want what it represents. You want to go back to 1982. You want to be that guy again. The guy on the magazine covers. The guy everyone loved. But buying this car won't do that. It'll just sit in your garage and remind you of what you're not anymore. David felt like he'd been punched. You don't know anything about me. I know what I read, Marcus said gently. I know you've had struggles. I know the last few years have been hard. And I know that buying this car won't fix any of that. It'll just be another thing you own. Another reminder. So that's it. You won't sell. I won't sell. David left the warehouse angry. Who did Marcus Welby think he was? Some collector telling David Hasselhoff what he did and didn't want. But the anger faded during the long drive back to Los Angeles. And what remained was something worse. The nagging feeling that Marcus was right. But David couldn't let it go. Over the next 6 months he kept reaching out, raising his offer. 200,000, 300,000, 400,000. Marcus's answer never changed. Not for sale. Finally, David decided to try one more time. In person. He drove back to Scottsdale without calling ahead. Showed up at the warehouse. Marcus was there, working on one of the cars. Mr. Hasselhoff, Marcus said, looking up. I didn't expect to see you again. $500,000, David said. No greeting, no small talk. $500,000 for KITT cash. Today. Marcus put down his tools, walked over. Come with me. He led David to a small office in the back of the warehouse, sat down behind a desk, gestured for David to sit. Mr. Hasselhoff, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it. Okay. I've been doing this for 20 years, collecting cars. I've bought cars from movie studios, from private owners, from estates, and I've sold a few too. Not many, but a few. And I've learned something. The people who want to buy these cars, they fall into 2 categories. Category 1, collectors like me, people who want to preserve history. Category 2, people trying to buy back their past. David didn't say anything. Marcus continued. You're category 2, and I get it. I really do. KITT represents the best time of your life, when you were on top, when everything made sense, and you think if you own that car, you'll own that feeling again. But you won't. You'll own a car. That's all. You don't understand, David said. I think I do. Mr. Hasselhoff, you were my hero, are my hero, but you don't need this car. You need to make peace with who you are now, not who you were in 1982, and you get to decide that. No, but I get to decide what I do with my cars, and I've decided that KITT, where people can see it, where it means something, not locked away in a garage belonging to someone who's trying to relive glory days. David stood up. You're making a mistake. I'm offering you $500,000, and I'm saying no, not because I don't need the money, because selling it to you would be wrong, for you and for the car. David walked out, got in his car, started driving, but he only made it 5 miles before he had to pull over. His hands were shaking, his vision was blurring. He was crying, actually crying, sitting in his car on the side of a highway in Arizona, crying like a child, because Marcus was right about all of it. David didn't want the car. He wanted to be Michael Knight again. He wanted to be the guy who had it all together, the guy who was in control, the guy everyone looked up to. But that guy was gone. That guy had drowned in vodka bottles, and broken promises and years of self-destruction, and no amount of money could buy him back. David sat in that car for an hour, crying, then just sitting, staring at nothing, thinking about everything, about how he'd spent years trying to recapture something that was gone, trying to be someone he wasn't anymore, trying to buy back a past that existed only in his memory. He thought about his daughters, about how they'd tried to tell him the same thing Marcus had just told him. Dad, you need to let go. You need to accept who you are now, not who you were. But David hadn't listened. He'd kept chasing, kept trying to prove he was still the Hoff, still relevant, still important. But sitting in that car, crying over a Trans Am he couldn't buy, David finally understood. He wasn't Michael Knight. He never really had been. Michael Knight was a character, a role, a performance. The real David Hasselhoff was flawed and broken and struggling, and that was okay. That was human. That was real. He called his therapist from the car. I need to talk. Where are you? Arizona. On the side of the road. I need to talk. Talk to me. David told her everything. About KITT, about Marcus, about the $500,000, about crying in his car, like a pathetic old man. And his therapist listened. Then she said something simple but profound. David, you're mourning. You're mourning the person you used to be. And that's normal. That's healthy. But you can't bring that person back. You can only accept who you are now and move forward. But who am I now? David asked. Without Knight Rider, without the fame, without the past, who am I? You're a father, a work in progress, a person in recovery, a human being trying to do better. That's who you are. David drove home that night with the windows down and the radio off. Just silence, just thought. Just acceptance slowly beginning to take root. He didn't need to buy KITT. He didn't need to own his past. He just needed to let it go. He never contacted Marcus Welby again. Marcus kept KITT in his collection. Still has it. Still shows it to visitors. And David made peace with that. Not immediately. Not easily. But eventually. A year later, David's daughter Haley called. Dad, I saw an article. Someone's offering KITT replicas for sale. Perfect recreations. You could buy one if you wanted. I don't want one, David said. Really? You were so obsessed with getting the original. I was obsessed with the wrong thing. I thought owning that car would make me feel like I did in 1982. But nothing's going to make me feel like that. Because I'm not that person anymore. And that's okay. Haley was quiet for a moment. Dad, I'm proud of you. For what? For letting go. David thinks about KITT sometimes. About that black Trans Am sitting in a warehouse in Arizona. About Marcus Welby who wouldn't sell it to him no matter how much money he offered. And David understands now why Marcus said no. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about being difficult. It was about protecting David from himself. Because if David had bought that car, he would have sat in it every day, staring at the dashboard, gripping the wheel, trying to remember what it felt like to be Michael Knight, trying to recapture something that was gone forever, and it would have destroyed him, slowly, quietly, but completely. Marcus Welby saved David Hasselhoff that day, not by selling him the car, by refusing to, by forcing David to confront the truth he'd been avoiding, that the past is the past, that you can't buy it back, that moving forward requires letting go. The last time David talked about KITT publicly, a reporter asked if he regretted not buying it when he had the chance. David smiled. I regret a lot of things, but not buying that car isn't one of them. Because I finally understand that I don't need it. I don't need to own my past. I just need to be present for my future. That's what the owner told him. That's what made him break down crying in a parking lot in Arizona. Not cruelty, truth. The truth that David Hasselhoff had been running from for years. That he wasn't Michael Knight. That he never would be again. And that was okay. Because David Hasselhoff didn't need KITT. He needed to be himself. Flawed, broken, struggling, but real. And no car, no matter how iconic, could give him that. Only he could. By accepting who he was. By letting go of who he'd been. By moving forward instead of looking back. The car is still in Arizona. Still gleaming under warehouse lights. Still perfect. Still frozen in 1982. But David Hasselhoff isn't frozen anymore. He's moving. Slowly. Imperfectly. But forward. And that's worth more than any car ever could be.